Forget the noble hero who stole from the rich to give to the poor. Forget the green tights, the righteous crusade against taxes, and the romance in Sherwood Forest. It is a lie. Hollywood fabricated everything. The earliest record of this name doesn't appear in a ballad of justice, but in the grim parchment of year 1225 Yorkshire Court roll. His name was Robertus Hode. He wasn't a dispossessed nobleman fighting for King Richard. He was a ruthless, cold-blooded fugitive whose property was seized by the Liberty of York because he fled from royal justice. In the oldest surviving 15th century texts, like the Gest of Robyn Hode, this man is an erratic, violent yeoman. He doesn't redistribute wealth. He robs travelers at bow point, forces them to pay for their own captured meals, and decapitates his enemies without a shred of remorse. He didn't live in Sherwood. His hunting ground was the lawless canopy of Barnesdale Forest. And the enemy he fought wasn't just a corrupt sheriff. It was the brutal tyranny of the king's Lex Foresta, a legal system that made breathing the wrong air in the woods a capital crime. This is the dark, unvarnished history of England's most lethal myth. Pop culture demands that Robin Hood operated out of Sherwood Forest in Nottinghamshire. The medieval reality points somewhere far more brutal. The earliest texts place his primary encampment in Barnesdale Forest, a dense woodland valley in Yorkshire straddling the Great North Road. This wasn't a hidden sanctuary for merry singing. It was a high-risk choke point. The Great North Road was the primary commercial highway for wealthy merchants, high-ranking bishops, and royal tax collectors traveling between London and York. Robin Hood didn't live deep in the wilderness out of a love for nature. He picked a tactical ambush corridor designed for maximum financial disruption. To understand his lethality, you must discard the idea that he was a rogue aristocrat like Robin of Loxley. The 15th century records identify him purely as a yeoman, a free land-owning commoner below the status of gentry. This distinction is critical. Yeomen were the primary muscle of the English infantry, men legally bound to train with the English longbow. This weapon was a massive 6-foot piece of carved yew wood requiring a staggering draw weight of up to 180 pounds. Skeletal remains from the era show that a lifetime of pulling these bows permanently deformed the archers' spines and enlarged their left shoulders. Robin Hood wasn't agile or graceful. He possessed the dense, asymmetrical muscle structure of a heavy shock troop soldier. When an arrow left his bow, it traveled at nearly 100 miles per hour, capable of piercing iron chainmail from 200 yards away. While the 1225 court roll names Robertus Hode, scholars point to another terrifying candidate recorded in the 1260s. Roger Godbird. Godbird was an active, heavily armed rebel leader who operated in Sherwood and Barnesdale Forest during the Barons' War. Unlike the clean-shaven heroes of modern film, Godbird ran a highly organized guerrilla network. He evaded capture for years, raided royal abbeys, and was eventually hunted down by the Sheriff of Nottingham using a private army. When the medieval balladeers sang of Robin Hood, they weren't referencing a single man. They were blending the criminal records of multiple real-world insurgent leaders into one terrifying composite phantom. The legends claim Robin fought against arbitrary tax rates. The raw truth is that he fought against a legal nightmare known as Lex Foresta, the Norman Forest Law. Introduced by William the Conqueror, this law declared vast swaths of England as private royal hunting reserves. Within these boundaries, everything belonged to the king. If a commoner killed a deer, gathered firewood, or even cleared land for crops, the punishment wasn't a fine. It was blinding, castration, or hanging. Royal foresters operated as judge, jury, and executioner, extorting the local population to line their own pockets. The historical Robin Hood didn't become a criminal because he hated taxes. He was a desperate man pushed into a corner by a weaponized legal system that criminalized human survival inside nature itself. The idea of robbing from the rich to give to the poor is a completely modern invention, added centuries later to make a violent highwayman palatable to Victorian audiences. In the earliest historical ballads, Robin Hood's interactions with money are strictly transactional or strategic. He forces captured wealthy monks to eat expensive meals with him, then audits their personal purses, taking every coin. If he gives money to a local knight, it isn't out of pure charity. It is a loan to settle a debt with a corrupt abbey, securing a high status ally in his ongoing guerrilla warfare. He didn't want to destroy the class system. He wanted to exploit it to keep himself alive and running. The legendary Sheriff of Nottingham was not a singular cartoon villain, but an elite, systemic class of royal administrators. In the 13th century, the High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, and the Royal Forests held unchecked tax collecting power. These sheriffs didn't chase outlaws through the trees. They operated from high stone keeps, weaponizing the king's debts to seize peasant lands. If a yeoman defaulted on a single royal payment, the sheriff's bailiffs confiscated their livestock, tools, and home, rendering them instant, desperate fugitives. Robin Hood's war was not a personal feud. It was an existential strike against a bureaucratic processing machine. Pop culture refuses to show how the historical Robin Hood actually died, preferring to let him ride off into a golden sunset. The 15th century ballads record a dark, calculated assassination. Old and failing in health, Robin traveled to Kirklees Priory in Yorkshire to seek a common medieval medical treatment, bloodletting. The prioress of Kirklees, his own cousin, recognized him. Instead of healing him, she conspired with a knight named Roger de Doncaster, who held a fierce blood feud against the outlaw. The prioress locked Robin in a private room and deliberately cut a major vein too deep, locking the door as he slowly bled to death inside the stone walls. This wasn't a heroic death on a battlefield. It was a quiet, domestic execution carried out by his own bloodline. With the last remnants of his strength, Robin blew his horn 3 times, alerting his loyal yeoman, Little John. Breaking through the lock, Little John found his leader dying and demanded vengeance, asking for permission to burn Kirklees Priory to the ground. Robin refused, citing his strict moral code against harming women. Instead, he asked for his longbow one final time. He shot an arrow out of the window into the dense woods, commanding that he be buried wherever the arrow struck. The gravesite still sits in the woods near Kirklees today, a stark stone monument marking the exact spot where a violent highwayman transcended reality to become an immortal secular myth. Why did history rewrite a ruthless, decapitating highwayman into a noble, wealth-distributing hero? Because the human psyche cannot handle raw, unvarnished truth. As the brutal centuries of the Middle Ages faded, Elizabethan playwrights and Victorian novelists systematically sanitized Robin Hood. They injected Maid Marian to add romance, elevated his social status to a displaced earl to appeal to the aristocracy, and invented the concept of charitable redistribution to satisfy political agendas. They took a gritty symbol of peasant defiance against a tyrannical legal system and turned him into a safe, packaged children's fable. The real Robin Hood never wanted to save the world. He wanted to survive it. The physical grave of Robertus Hod at Kirklees remains one of England's most guarded mysteries. Tucked away on private, heavily overgrown estate land, the original 13th century grave marker has been chiseled away by centuries of relic hunters who believed the stone possessed healing properties. Today, a ruined 18th century Gothic enclosure protects the remaining fragments of the monument. Skeptics claim the site is a medieval forgery, while local legends insist the bones of a giant yeoman archer still rest beneath the Yorkshire topsoil. Truth and folklore have fused so deeply into the earth that separating them has become completely impossible.